What if I told you you've been lied to? You always hear, write perfect code from the start. As a beginner, this could be farther from the truth. And the truth is you actually need to write messy code and write a lot of it. Give me a few minutes, and in this video, I'll show you why writing messy and more quantity of code is better than actually the quality of code. Let's go ahead and dive in. So if you're new, my name is Zazo. I've been coding for over 10 years. I've held different positions like software quality assurance engineer, software engineer, data analytics, and I've done a little bit with data science and machine learning. When you're first learning to code, if you're focusing on perfection, you're getting really caught up in trying to have the perfect syntax, the perfect structure, the perfect everything. But here's the truth. Chasing perfection as a beginner specifically only slows you down in the process. Coming from a person who did the same thing, I read the book very early on in my coding journey, Clean Code, which, as you know, can be a very good book. It teaches you how to write very modular code where it can be reused in a bunch of different places. The key thing is that I wasn't there to the point where I was even able to write a lot of code by myself. So you think of it from a beginner standpoint is you're trying to do the fundamentals and also trying to write this really clean, optimized, really reusable code. They really don't mesh well together. So here's a pro tip for you. Focus on finishing projects first before perfecting them. You can always refactor and do a lot of optimization later, but as beginners, you really need to be writing a lot of code, even if that happens to be a little sloppy. So for beginners, honestly, the power of repetition is so vital at the beginner stage because you at this point of being, fresh into coding, you don't know what you don't know. And the only way that you get there is by continuously doing things. So writing things like loops, conditions, functions, that's only going to solidify these concepts and internalize these key concepts first. So things may look messy. I know we've always seen, different things of like, if statements, a bunch of just if this, else if this, else if this, those type of things. Do that at first because that's really going to help you in your learning and grabbing those concepts. But after you'll be able to, optimize and kind of clean that up. But the key thing is that you really solidify these things. You need to be just repetition. So one of the key points here is that, think of coding as, like I said, learning a new language. So you don't master grammar in one day. Even a lot of adults still don't use English 100% correct. But the only way that you kind of learn is by speaking, making mistakes, and then gradually improving over time. So practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes progress. Thing is that you consistently just code and code and code and focus on these key concepts while you're building things. At first, worry about perfection later. So when you're writing a lot of code, you'll inevitably make mistakes and you'll make a lot of them, which this is good because debugging actually teaches you more of how to program and how things actually work than like reading about it in a textbook ever will. So let's say you accidentally create something like an infinite loop, right? Fixing that forces you to actually understand how loops operate. And this lesson will actually stick with you much longer than everything just working perfectly, right? When you struggle through something, that really sticks in your mind and you remember it. So the next time you come across that situation, you will, even be better in that situation because you've dealt with it before. So quantity actually leads to quality over time. This is the reason why I wouldn't focus on having everything perfect, because once you're coding a lot and then over time you're starting to recognize you're using the same type of patterns, naturally you will begin to understand how to do things more efficiently and more effectively. And you'll kind of automatically, once you pass a certain point in your coding journey, you'll understand how to already optimize and clean up your code. Kind of a byproduct of writing a lot of code and a lot of messy code where you have to go and, for example, you write a bunch of if statements, right? And your conditions change. You know that you have to make changes in 15 different areas. As a programmer, you're probably going to be a little bit lazy and like, how can I do this better? So with that being said, that comes with time, but doing a lot of these things and really, cementing these concepts and these different pain points when you're going through, you're really going to kind of grasp and learn it more rather than everything just working perfectly fine and you never have to deal with it. Then when you are faced with it and you can't really escape it or you don't know what to do, you're just going to freeze and you're going to spend a lot of time, unnecessary time, on something that you shouldn't have to. So you actually learn more by completing projects than you do in sitting in an open project for months, days, weeks, years. When you finish a project, whether the code be messy or not, that's going to teach you a lot more because you're able to bypass a lot of the steps. Think about it. Once again, if you're building a calculator and you were over complicating how to make it populate on screen or how to add the first button, you would never gain the experience of creating the calculator as a whole because you're stuck on that first part. So finishing the projects is definitely more important than, sitting there and worrying about how to write the cleanest code. Chances are a lot of these first projects, no one's going to see anyway, right? Let's be honest, no one's really going to see them. And if you show an employer or anything like that, you can always optimize code. You can always do different things before the interview. But at the end of the day, your very first couple projects, you're probably just doing it to learn. So no one's going to see it. What's the point in having super clean code anyway? The most important part is that you're finishing these projects and really solidifying the things that you've learned through the projects. And that's why you'll see in a lot of tutorials where there are simple projects like a to-do list, a calculator, because for beginners, if you're doing those things by yourself, you're going to learn a lot. If you're doing it with a tutorial, everything's going to seem perfectly fine because the person that makes the tutorial dealt with these issues before posting the actual video. That's the reason why everything's clear and cut, but that's not how it worked. Even a really seasoned programmer, even making a calculator, depending on how simple it is, they probably hit an error or two. It's just, human nature. You miss certain things here, syntax error, a data type issue, whatever it may be. So just work on finishing projects, small projects, and then you build that confidence, you build that motivation, and then you move on to bigger and better things. So if you're a beginner coder, here's my advice. Do not focus on perfection. Focus on writing a bunch of code and finishing a bunch of projects. Quantity is definitely more important than quality at this beginner stage of your coding journey. So if this did help anybody, could you please like the video? Feel free to leave me a comment down below and go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want more tips like this. Let's get you to that first job. Let's get you to learning coding, and I'll see you on the next one. Love, peace, and chicken grease.